Future State Superman Worlds of War issue 2. Again, different creative teams on the different stories. So this main story was absolutely phenomenal. Can I just emphasize that? Phenomenal. I think it's actually better than the last one.
Okay, so I really like the first one for what it meant for Superman, right? But this one for what it meant for Clark, right? Like the story that he tells, right, that we're reading, and then to see what he's going through on Warworld, it is a really, like, I feel like these are two of my favorite Superman stories in a long time.
I'm so excited for these upcoming, runs, on the respective books from this team now.
Yeah, so context is the character from the last issue is looking for Kent Farm, and one of the kids from the camp sort of runs up and tries to catch up with her and ask her about, why'd you run off, whatever. And she's like, and she said, I didn't mean anything bad by it, but, like, this is, what Clark means to me, and, this article saved my life, and this is why I know he's coming back. And he glances at it, and then for the rest of the book, because we cut back to them a couple of times, but it's not that too much. Most of the book is Superman fighting on Warworld, as we read in the narration, this news article he wrote called A Life Well Lived, which is the story of this man who just passed away in Metropolis when he wrote it. This black man who was a pianist, a musician, and he's
a jazz musician.
He had a foot deformity, which meant he wasn't drafted into World War II, but he ended up going anyway because he read about the atrocities that were happening in Europe, and he wanted to get involved. And the whole point of the story is that if you saw him at the end of his life, he was homeless and he died alone, didn't seem to have anyone, and it seemed kind of sad, and you might look at him and think he failed. He failed at life because this is how his life ended. But then he goes through his life and talks about how he had a wife and he had a child, and his child died, unfortunately young, and he spent the rest of his life making sure that he funded a scholarship in his child's name for people, and I think towards the end he lists like 57 people were able to get an education because
56,
of it.
56 people that he inspired, like he was able to help.
Yeah.
And being
Do you think there was
to the
a
community.
conscious effort not to choose 52 there?
Actually, I think this is maybe the one bit of inexperience that Johnson's shown, is that he's new to DC and he doesn't realise that he should be putting 52.
I actually think that was an intentional choice not to. I mean, right. First off, the writer kind of spoke on Twitter that okay, this is inspired by a handful of different people, but he did specify one specific person, and I don't know if maybe this is a real number, or if it was just one thing where he doesn't want us to be thinking 52. It's he doesn't want us pulled out of the story in that way, so I actively chose a slightly different number.
Yeah, it could be. But yeah, so I started following him on Twitter a couple weeks ago, now that he's taking over Superman. And so coming across this story that, the Edgar Waters character was based on several people, like Connor said, but the biggest and most prominent inspiration was the late, great Medgar Evers. And basically how he, not only did he fight in World War II, but he was instrumental in the civil rights movement too. And it wasn't just the impact of World War II. It was,
that's just to set the context. Just to set the context up for what you're saying here, is that's what this character Waters and the news article's about. We find out he did also do that when he came back from World War II. He was at the protest. He got beat up. He was jailed because he fought back. He went right back out and fought again. He never gave up. Yeah. He was always a man of determination. He always believed in what he believed in. And that's essentially what we're seeing on Warworld, is Superman is constantly fighting. He's there to
on behalf of others.
Yes, he's there to break the chains. He's there to free the people who are enslaved on Warworld. And we get towards the end of the story, when the narration kind of stops, Mongol comes out and sort of incinerates Superman. And Superman's lying there. He's bloody. He's beaten. And as this is happening, we see back on Earth, as the story's been told, the kids find the real Kent Farm, because the one that everyone goes to is this fake one that's been built for tourists, but the real one they find because it was knocked over at some point, and they actually find the storm cellar where the original ship is held, and we have this moment where there's tears in their eyes. But we get to this scene where Mongol's got Superman chained up. And Mongol is essentially saying, I'm going to break your spirit. I am going to make you forget who you ever were. I'm going to make you forget Earth. I'm going to make you forget everything you ever believed in. And when you get to that point, I'm going to send you back to Earth, and then you're going to murder people. You're going to murder people left and right because you don't remember how you felt about them, and you'll never remember who you are. And ultimately, it's a story about breaking someone's will and the determination of Superman's will to say that's never going to happen. I'm always going to free people. I'm always going to do this. And I'm not leaving here until I free every single last one. And this moment...
The futility of his fighting as well, because even when he saves them, Mongol just kills them anyway.
But the reason why I'm kind of rushing to this point is because I want to just mention... I'll just say it, and this is going to be my panel of the week when we get there. The panel of Mongol walking away in sort of shadow from Superman who's still chained up.
And Superman in the light still.
Yeah. And Superman who's just been defiant and said, no, this is never going to work no matter what you do. I'm going to save everyone here and I'm going to go home after that. It makes me think of other good examples. The Cool Hand looks a really good example of a movie where the character, the prison guards are trying to break him down and break his spirit, and no matter what, he never is broken to the very end. And he kind of inspires everyone else to not lose who they are. And I think this is like such a core Superman, like push to his limits story.
There was a small touch as well that I didn't clock through the art. It makes sense when Mong was like, why do I even bother giving you the sword? You don't kill anyone with it. Despite we see all this, Superman is hitting people with the sword. He's always... Because I went back and checked afterwards, it's always with the flat of the blade and just the sheer force of it.
More specifically, he doesn't say he didn't kill anyone. He specifically says there's no bloodshed. So it's not even just that he's not doing stabs. He's not cutting at all. He's not using the blade in any way.
And what we know about Mongol, right, is he's like the Roman emperors, right? This is all for, bread and circuses, keep everybody, And so the fact that Superman's playing by his own rules and is like, I'm not, no matter what you do, I'm not, and it goes with that story that he's telling and why it's so inspirational to the girl at the beginning of the story, right, too, is because it was written by Clark Kent. Sure, we know he's Superman, but it's about this, Superman writing about this other person and how he pulled inspiration from him, from just a regular guy who went and he did. And just the fact that it's laid over this gladiatorial stuff, it is a really good story.
It makes Superman feel like this larger than life thing, but not in a godlike way. It makes him feel larger than life and as a force of inspiration kind of way. And there's a line actually early on in the book that I really love, where she says to the other guy, like, he never had to tell us he was Superman. If you actually go back and read all of his articles from before then, he was telling us the whole time. And
so I was just looking for that line. I also thought it was early on. It's a lot later than you think. It's right before that moment with Mongol that you were talking about that you loved.
Oh, really? So it's later in the book. Regardless, though, the line,
great line,
is wonderful. Yeah. The tears throwing down her face, and there's and they look up just as at the end of their scene, the last time we see them, they look up at the sky, and it could be a shooting star, but it could also be Superman coming home. It's kind of...
It's okay. So as we're talking, so I wanted to pull up that tweet from Philip Kennedy Johnson because I saw that after I read the issue, and I was like, okay, this is real cool because I was wondering if it was a real person. And me and Talking Superman had a conversation about this book earlier. It was either yesterday or today, I can't remember. And then Philip Kennedy Johnson responds as we're talking about it to what, this is going to end in House of L, which I didn't realize.
I didn't either until we got to the end of the story.
Yeah, me too.
We got to the end
in the because that's the one shot that we haven't had yet.
Yeah, that's the one shot that's coming next week. And I was the same. I got to the last page and when it said to be continued in House of L, I was like, oh, okay.
I suddenly got a lot more interested.
Before I was kind of like, oh, that weird one shot that's come at the end, whatever. I mean, we'll try it. I don't really know or care. And then
I don't even realized it was this writer was on that book.
No, and it's Godlewski too, who's doing the book. One of the books with
I think Godlewski's doing the event lead-in, right? The 2-issue thing.
I think so. Yeah. And so, but yeah, I didn't realize that. I mean, beyond Starfire, or what looks like Starfire, Tamarinian with the House of El Crest, like I was excited for that, but I didn't know what this book was going to be.
But all of a sudden, I was like, oh, I'm interested now. I'm excited for this.
It just became a must-read.
Right. But yeah, so he said, hey guys, House of L does share some material with Worlds of War, but other questions will be answered in the ongoing series later this year. So this is definitely seeding stuff for his run.
That makes sense because we know one of the early arcs. I can't remember which book it's in. I think it's Superman. Is Warworld Rising, right? So we're kind of on the path towards this stuff, which again is the sort of thing we're talking about. We're seeing that in the Batman line as well, where they're seeding in the magistrate stuff over the next few months. So really interesting stuff going forward, I think.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, this is as I was reading it, just felt like a special story that kind of gets the elegance and the inspiration of Superman in a way that is sometimes hard to capture, in a way that's hard. And I think telling Superman stories from the perspective of people that he's touched, from people that he's rescued or inspired, is often the best way to actually go about it, because it does give you this aura of people who do.
I'm really excited to see more of Clark Kent, the journalist, because don't get me wrong, we often tend to just get that sidelined and have Lois as the journalist because we don't want to upstage her almost. But obviously Clark has the job for a reason. He's good at it. So seeing his writing a little bit more might be interesting. Yeah,
I was just going to say that Clark still got a job on his own at the Daily Planet. Like for as good as Lois has, and she's an award-winning journalist, Clark's not a slouch. So to see that play so heavy into the story, like it was Clark Kent that inspired her, not so much Superman, which I just like that concept as well. And I also like the fact that's not erasing what Bendis did with him. It would have been easy just to have whatever happened go back to, there's Superman and Clark Kent, they're different people. But the fact that no, this is status quo for DC now. It feels special now,
Yeah, and I don't think we've talked about it enough, but Yanin's art is freaking phenomenal.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful.
It takes a special talent to be able to balance two kids walking through a field and finding a spaceship, and when you turn the page, there's a gladiatorial contest going on that is just utterly brutal.
And again, we also, I think we have Jordi Belair as well. The colors, with the deep reds and oranges on Warworld are just gorgeous.
Yeah, that stuff with the kids, looking through the fields and finding the ship. It's got a very sort of, explorers, 80s kids, looking for the mystery kind of. Even though that's not really what it is. It's not really a mystery.
No.
They roughly know where they are and what they're doing.
No, but it's kids being kids.
It has that look to it.
That adventure vibe.
Yeah, I love it.
So you've got that.
The wonder, I think, is the feeling that sells it.
Yeah,
like when
the wonder.
they found the Storm Cellar.
Yeah, so you've got that. You got the deep reds of the fighting, but then you've got that black with the harsh light of the torture chamber where they have that conversation after the fact. It's a wonderful mix of different color mappings and color tones. No, I think it's interesting that the Earth is relatively muted, whereas both the examples we have on Warworld are very, very extreme. The alien place is very either extremely red or extremely dark.
And I don't think it's just specifically that it's alien compared to Earth. I think it's that Warworld itself is a very intense place. It's kind of its purpose. And it's like, no, everything's heightened there. That's why we go to the extreme colors.
And it's the whole color theory thing too, right? Where red is very warm and hot, and it makes you aware of it. Whereas you go on Earth and it's very cool, and it's blues and purples and light greens and stuff, and just it snaps you. It really grabs a hold of you when you turn that page.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a moment when in the fighting where one of them cuts Superman's tendon, and it was so visceral. Like I actually winced when I read it. I don't do that. I don't react to physical pain in comics, because especially not a Superman comic. It's just giant punches. But it just felt so raw in this cut, and then you have this panel of just him screaming in anguish and going down and trying to get back up. That whole sequence was just phenomenal.
Yeah, and just the general idea of the whole premise of this book being Clark writing about a human being that's inspired him, and that's what he spends his time at the Daily Planet trying to do, if he can, is highlighting why he loves humanity and why he fights for it and why it's important. It has all the right notes. Does
anyone have anything bad to say about this?
I don't. I looked through it again and being like, well, Honestly, I can't. Like, it's.
Well, go on, do it then, Matt. Rate it.
It's a 10.
I expected
Boom.
as much. Connor.
Yeah, I'm also throwing out the 10.
I am also giving it a 10.
Boom.
This was a perfect Superman comic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I read out the backups, just FYI.
Okay. I will be quick because I read 2 of them.
Why? Why?
Because I had nothing else to do. It's fine.
Because we were recording earlier this week, I just made the call after like my second book, being like, Joe, what? No backups this week.
It's fine. I'm handling it. I can go, quick as I can.
Okay.
Mr. Miracle.
Mm-hmm.
It leads to him ending up in a time loop. So everything that he's done to get through Metropolis, the reason in the Metropolis issues where the robots were chasing him and they were Kryptonian was because John sent them in to check on the people in the bottled Metropolis. And then in doing so, his mother box interpreted the Kryptonian stuff. So when he got sent out to Warworld or wherever he is, right? I think it's Warworld.
Yeah, it's Warworld.
Right? He basically ends up sending the signal to himself to get himself. So now, as the master of escape, he now has to get out of a time loop.
That's just an interesting concept, honestly.
It's really cool, and it makes me interested in the series or the mini whatever that we're going to get with Charlotte Norman.
I know that they said that was going to be like a new origin, but do you think that's maybe just like one part of it, and the rest of it will actually be this time loop?
Yeah, maybe. Because I think what hurt this a little bit is one, it's it's in this anthology of all these different stories where I'm not really wanting to read them.
Especially as I didn't read the second part of the other one, so I kind of felt like, what was the point of reading this?
But the fact that it was in order is a big problem. It was it was 1, then 3, then 2, then 4.
When you're talking about a time loop, it would have been nice to have it in the order that he had it in. So then you go back to 1, which real cool. Excited. So then I get to the next one, which is the Midnighter Future State Part 2 with Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad with Oming art.
The only thing I know from this is the panel I saw with what I think was Baby Midnighter saying, quote Shakespeare one more time, bitch.
Yes.
Like what the hell happened in this story?
Yeah, so who we thought was Apollo is that Trojan guy, Andre's Trojan. You come to find out that he was like a kind of hippy dippy yoga cult kind of dude that sold out for the Singularity. So he's almost like he's downloaded his consciousness into the internet. So now he's just kind of like a B version of Cyborg Superman, who I forget that character's name, Henshaw. So he's basically like a smash Elon Musk with Henshaw, and now you have Trojan.
Just what everyone
and
wanted.
You come to find out that Midnighter has put himself in this predicament, and the person that he was talking him through all of this is himself. Because we already had a time loop with Mr. Miracle. Why not do another one in the story right after it? Which was very maddening.
That's an editorial oversight. Because I don't blame either of those stories independently, because they pitched their stories and went, hey, I want this. But editorial should have stepped in.
They can I just swap this into the other because Mr. Miracle's on both.
Because
put that somewhere else.
To tie the Warworld stuff because they're on here. Midnighter, you find out they are on the husk of Warworld, and that Andre Soren has used, or Trojan has used it to create that Neridonium. That's like Kryptonite Plus that we had seen in the Metropolis book. And so Midnighter's basically going to stop him, and that he has created a loop of himself where he's going to go back through and almost like a video game and go through until he gets it right. And he ends up as the baby because he initiates this drive that ends up creating the time loop, and Trojan uses that energy. Basically, he's like, hey, I am ageless. I am information. I can, where's you? And he de-ages him and re-ages him. So he ends up going from a baby to an old man to that's where he tags in his future self, or his, at this point it's timey-wimey and I can't keep track, but he sends him to another. So how this ends is with a version of Midnighter going to a I'm guessing a different version of Warworld, and trying to figure out how to get out of the time loop. The other part of him, who I'm assuming has gotten out of the time loop, which is in the present, where I think that's where the book's going to go, because we have the backup in Action or Superman, has taken basically the leftover remnants of Trojan in this metal skull, almost Brainiac-esque, and he's going to try to figure this out in the present, which is almost, I know time travel enough to know that's a bad idea. You don't take tech from the future, bring it to the present.
I mean, I remember when I saw the Baby Midnight, they mentioned Bootstrap Paradox. So obviously that's
right.
It's they caused the whole thing. It's
right.
What came first. So presumably this is them causing it eventually.
Right. And so that's where we get it. So it's fine. Like it's not my jam. I only read it because I'm like, I spent full money for this book. I'm going to read at least 3 of the stories.
I honestly felt like I got my money's worth with that first one.
Yeah,
I did too. But when you're sitting there and you're like, I still have most of this book to read.
That's the weird thing. I would actually say anyone who's not read this book, I would say the $8. That first story is worth the $8 on its own.
I would agree it's worth more than that. But when it's sitting in front of me.
I know, I get it. I mean, honestly, skimming through some of this as you're talking about it, obviously Mr. Miracle one, I liked well enough what I read before. I have no complaints with that. But skimming through this Midnighter story and then skimming through whatever this last one is that I've completely forgotten from last time.
Yeah, I didn't read that one. Black Racer.
Yeah, like none of it appealed. Like I'm just looking at it and going, I'm glad I didn't read this. This would have just been a chore to get through.
Honestly, thanks to this Midnight story, I'm kind of glad knowing that, okay, well, that's one backup I don't need to read in the main line when it comes back, because obviously this is continuing in the backups of Action, I think this one is. Frustrating that I'll be paying the extra $1, but also it'll keep my reading time down a little bit.
It's only a few.
I won't feel bad about skipping it.
So,
it's only a few issues though.
Yeah. So I will probably read it just now out of habit, because now I did read it, because again, it wasn't. I don't have a like.
Matt has a problem.
Yes, I do. I don't have a desire to read Midnighter, but now that I've read this and it's the same team, right? I'm kind of like, okay, where is this going? And it's already going to be in the back of a book I'm already reading.
Sure.
So
no self-control.
I know I don't. This is why I have over 20. What is it now? 24 boxes of comics in my garage, because I can't stop. So.
Remember when Matt said he was going to go digital?
I remember that.
That's funny. I am a liar.
So you didn't read the Black Racer one then?
I did not.
Okay. So do you want to rate the whole book as a whole?
I don't, because I want to keep the 10 on World.
All right, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I get it. All right. There you go.